Breeze Nation, what is good? It's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. I've been off for a little bit of time, but I come back with an absolute banger because we have a very special guest on today's episode. We are going to be joined by Amin as we talk Bulls, as we talk Bears, and as we talk a little bit about Mr. Amin. All that and more on today's episode. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another edition. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. You've seen enough of me. You've heard enough of me. I have to welcome in the great Amin to the podcast. Of course, voice of the Chicago Bulls that we hear every day on TV and gets us hype and gets us through the hard times. I will say that, Adam, you have done a phenomenal job of getting us through the hard times. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right, man. Good to talk to you. Good to be on with you for a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely good to have you on. You don't even know this, dog. Like it was so cool to finally be able to get you on today's episode because I've talked to the Breeze people about this, but being able to tell you in person, Adam was the first person that made me feel comfortable belonging in this space. My first Bears training camp. I walk up to, I'm at the camp. We're just kind of standing around. Yep. I'm trying not to look like I don't belong there. That's pretty much the bottom. I'm like, look like you're supposed to be here so they don't kick you out. And I saw Adam. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm ready to introduce myself. Technically, this was the first time we met in person. Adam comes up and probably is the only other man that has hugged me this tight in my life. And he was like, I'm proud of you. You've been grinding. You've been dominating. Keep going. You're supposed to be here. And gave me this like pep talk that has stuck with me 5 years later. So, Adam, I appreciated you so much for that. Thank you for coming on the show. It truly is an honor to have you here, man.
That was really, really kind of you to say. Very a good memory too, on a very hot August day.
Oh my God! Yeah, it was definitely one of those warmer days out at camp where, and I believe this was before we were having the fun of Ben Johnson. This was still trying to make the Matt Eberflus years look and sound good. We'll get into a little bit of Bears.
We're trying to tolerate it at that point.
100%. Definitely trying to tolerate it. We'll definitely get into some Bears talk today, but I do want to start off with the Chicago Bulls here, Adam. I'm sure that you have been talking about the Bulls ad nauseum at this point, but there's a lot of good things happening here, and it starts off with Bryson Graham. I mean, one of the biggest hires that the Bulls have started this whole process over with. Of course, you know, there's a lot of expectation on this plate. And there's a lot of similarities to where we started with Arturas Karnisovas. When you look at what Bryson Graham is going to bring to the Chicago Bulls, what do you expect to see kind of different within the organization with him than what we saw with AK and his regime?
Yeah, I think different executives play it differently, you know, when they're in the position. You know, a lot of these guys, and we were talking off the air, or you just mentioned, by the way, pre-Ben Johnson era. Like Ben, as a head coach, it's a different style, but I always talk about how different he was when he was in Detroit. Yeah. Like he was much more mild-mannered. Like when we'd go in to have conversations with him, as you know, as the OC, just talking about the offense. You know, as we got to know Ben over a couple of years and doing a lot of Detroit games, we kind of got into like, hey, this guy very, very sharp. Like clearly thinks about the game very deeply. So. Hey, would you know, is that a thought that you would really have as one to be a head coach? And I always hesitated to say like, oh yeah, Ben Johnson's going to be the next great head coach. Cause I thought, you know, he doesn't seem like he's thinking about that right now. He was so laser focused. And when he got to the head coaching position with the Bears, it was so funny to kind of completely see a change in personality. And that's not suddenly he's being somebody he isn't. Now he's acclimating to the position based off of everything he's watched in his career, you know, and all of his stops, you know, coming from kind of the background he comes from in North Carolina. I promise we'll get to the Bulls on this. I just figured, you know, if I'm going to talk Bears with anybody,
it is a great segue.
If I was going to talk Bears with anybody, I want to talk with you. So, but like just the kind of personality that fills the role, but it's an amalgamation of a lot of different things. I know that he took things from Dan Campbell, you know, in his time as his OC and said, hey, I'm going to do this. I love the structure of this. I like how he delegates. Like Dan is a big like delegator. So I think Ben wanted to make sure that he had his ducks in a row. And then when he feels comfortable, he'll delegate responsibilities to get other people involved and feel like they have ownership, because I think Ben felt that under Dan in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I see the personality kind of shift. But I know what works, from his time in Detroit, and I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff where he's like, I can't do that. I can't be Dan Campbell. I'm not 8 espresso coffees in, before noon and then just going nuts. I'm not a former player in the NFL. Like, he's taken the sensibilities that he has, combined with the structure that he has seen work, combined with, like, I wonder how I would do that if I was in that position. And I think
Yeah.
that's Bryce. I think that seems to be Bryson Graham, and I like that a lot. I like Ben in that position, and I appreciate where he's come from to where he is now. And I like how how there seemingly was a process and a thought behind a lot of how he wanted to structure, his position and under him in the organization. I think Bryson, based off of his previous experience, obviously played college ball at Texas A&M, but he's been, you know, part of the Pelicans for basically 15 years,
Yeah.
like in one organization, meaning he did a lot of different things. He was in every rung. 2 years as an intern. He was like the development director for players. He was the video coordinator, then the development coach, and then he was a scouting coordinator. And like he's gone through all these different rungs. I know from my conversations with people in the Pelicans organization that I'm familiar with, they've reached out to me and said like, "Hey, Bryson was great. CAA wanted to push him as like a broadcasting person, maybe with like ESPN's coverage or whatever, to talk
Mm.
about salary cap stuff and like the GM side of it, because we've seen Bob Myers do that a little bit. I think the fact that he's kind of associated with every position basically, and said, all right, well, I was an intern. I didn't like when people treated me this way. So when I moved up, I'm going to make sure I don't treat an intern like this. And when I move up to the next spot, I'm not going to treat the player development coach the way that the guy that had the position before me treated me. Like, I do think there's something to that. And I just feel like when you have that type of varied, wide ranging experience, you get good ideas over time that you can kind of self cultivate and self manicure, to where hopefully when you step into that role, you're like, all right, I know what I want to do. I'm sure I'm going to make mistakes. I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
going to mess something up, or I'm going to get the wrong guy, or I trusted the wrong source, or whatever. I'm sure there will be a mistake to be made soon or down the line, but at least there's a thought process on how I want to take on this position, and how I want to delegate and bring other people into the fold. And that was obviously one of the things that stuck out to me was, if I'm the smartest person in the room, something's wrong.
Yeah.
One of my favorite television shows of all time is The West Wing, and Leo McGarry talks about Martin Sheen's presidential character and says he likes smart people that disagree with him. Like, I think that's a great way to go about any leadership position. Like, hire smart people, see if they disagree with you, and then when you make the decision, make sure they trust you enough to follow through on your decision making and to follow the orders that you put out there. And I think that's the type of kind of ideal system that I would imagine for him based off of his previous experience.
No, phenomenal answer. Big West Wing guy, are you? I feel like we just locked in a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like we just locked in a little bit, dog.
One of my all-time favorite shows. A handful of rewatches.
Yep, West Wing is elite. It's a great rewatch. Yeah. It is a little interesting now seeing a lot of the stuff that's happened. But
certainly,
it is a
phenomenal in a lot of ways. I think for a lot of us, yeah.
It is a phenomenal rewatch. No, I love how you talk about he doesn't want to be the smartest person in the room. Hearing him talk about that, Adam, like you kind of see that too with the hires that he's made after that to the front office, and. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it really seems like down the line is down the line. Right now, we have to get people in here who know the draft well. And when you look at guys like AC Law, when you look at the assistant GM from Orlando, right? Like those are guys that it feels like, wow, OKC worked for a championship, right? But Orlando has drafted a lot of really talented players, and it hasn't worked. It seems like the full focus is right now, this draft has to be right.
I think so. And to the Orlando point, like they still have gotten to a point where they hadn't been for a while. They got to a playoff series, they were competitive in a playoff series, and a lot of those draft picks, the Anthony Blacks of the world, have hit. I know Franz Wagner is the quickest one to point to. And obviously when you get a player like, when you have a high draft pick, Banchero was an relatively easy choice to make, but like Anthony Black is a hit. Like that guy has turned it. Tristan Da Silva was an important player that they picked up. Like there's the offshoots, not just the big time guys that you end up drafting. And that's where the Bulls want to be. That's where the Bulls want to be now. They want to hit on 4 and 15. They want to hit on their second round picks, whether they want to use them for supplementation of their roster or as capital. Like you want to have an idea about what you want to do with this stuff. And you mentioned Law and Mervis, and those are, I think, two of the right type of people.
Yeah.
Younger, maybe haven't been in this position just yet, but that's where you put your trust in Bryson Graham. That's why he impressed the way he did, and that's why he got hired. So he wants to put people in that position that are like on the way up. He's trying to identify talent in that regard. And AC Law has good experience. Obviously Brooklyn last year, I was told, and I still have to go through all the timeline stuff, but he may not have actually been involved with the drafting of guys like, Danny Wolf and Yegor Dioman,
Right.
but that whole Brooklyn draft class that he was obviously like looking at as somebody who's, in charge of like player personnel and scouting and things like that. Like, I think, yeah, he was the director of player personnel with Brooklyn. So you're going to be looking and working with all these young players in some capacity. And all those guys for Brooklyn made great impacts. Like their rookie class was obviously they had 1 million picks. It felt like they had a bunch of rookies on their roster.
Nobody expected them to take all of them.
Yeah, they took every single guy. But to their credit, they had a lot of those guys, and in particular, Wolf and Dioman both getting like key minutes, especially in the second half of the year. So that's what I want to see. I want to make sure that somebody like AC Law, who has a sense for that type of player, what they're looking for, what an organization like Brooklyn was looking for. He was an amateur scouting director for the Oklahoma City Thunder for, I think, a year. He's been with the Sacramento Kings organization, so he's seen the lean organizations. I think, the Bulls are in an advantageous position to have, I would say, better resources in a lot of ways than the Sacramento Kings, and the opportunity that they have with the personnel that they can get in this offseason is a much bigger or a much better position to be in than what's going on with a salary heavy Sacramento organization right now. So I think that's good experience and good perspective to have. And then Steven Mervis, like you said, long time, I think 10, 12 years, something like that with the Orlando Magic, and has kind of gone through a lot of different aspects of that organization. But the biggest thing is salary cap, and that he was like their salary cap management specialist. And to me, that's important for the Bulls right now because they're going to have a lot of acres to explore in terms of what they want to do with this money. And again, the other part that I like about Bryson is the realism with which he spoke at the press conference. Like, hey, we're not building a championship contender for 26, 27. So that means when you have that much salary cap space, you can take on some bad money if some assets come along with it. So you can rebuild your bank here into your asset bank in terms of stockpiling some picks, and to have some hopefully higher level first round picks in the next 2 drafts as well. And you can maybe get a veteran that, could probably help shepherd along some of the younger guys. I think that's been missing a little bit. Nikola Vucevic, say what you will about his game, but he was a pro. And I think, with the previous locker room before all the trades, like people cared about him, and the younger guys, took to him. Io was a younger vet. Kobe was a younger vet. You don't really have a lot of that right now. Josh Giddey's probably, I know Patrick Williams and Josh Giddey are like your 2 most
tenured Bulls,
tenured Bulls, and 2 of your longest tenured players. Like how much younger the roster got all of a sudden. So I think that's an option and some flexibility that Graham, Mervis, Law, and the rest of the staff will have. And I think you focus on what type of personnel you're going to get. A lot of the work's going to be done for you in the top 4 picks because 1, 2, 3, whoever your best player available is at 4, and it's either going to be Wilson or Boozer in my estimation. You pick whoever that is because of those 2 guys. I know Acuff is like, kind of creeping into the minds and thoughts of a lot of people, and that's okay. But I think this is a small roster. Look how Cleveland was able to upset Detroit. They are one of the longest teams in the NBA, and they cause havoc on the defensive end. And Max Strus played a big role in that over the course of the last couple of games too. So I think that's where the Bulls are going to be looking. Some of that work is done for you. The 15th pick is really important. See who you get. Get the best players you can possibly get. Look at what you have. Say we have Giddey, Buzelis, Asenge, these 2 new guys. Here's who we want to keep for our bench from the current, free agent crop that is leaving the books, this summer? Do we want to bring back a Zach Collins because he's a veteran guy who, when he's healthy, can be an important influence on a lot of players, guys like him? Do you bring back Sexton because you need somebody to score some points? There's a lot of options that you have, and that's flexibility that the Bulls haven't had in quite some time.
Yeah, the Bulls have, I mean, literally everything ahead of them, and you can take whatever path you want. I do like that you mentioned the veteran players, right? We saw them do that. And the one thing that I credited, I'm not going to sit here and cap, right? Bryson Graham was probably the third guy on my list. I really liked Matt Lloyd, some of the other guys that were out there, right? But like, when I looked at Bryson Graham, the one thing I credited him with and I thought was phenomenal was making one of the toughest decisions you've got to make, right? Of moving on from Trae Young. Like, that's a crazy choice to make when you think about how many tickets he sells, how many jerseys he sells. He's the face of this organization, but you saw them finally get out of that play-in once they went out and got a guy like CJ McCollum, who was that tenured vet. So I am very intrigued to see if they're going to go with a veteran player that really feels like, they are poised to start to kind of like, let's build this the right way. Let's get guys in here that have seen what the NBA is like, and they can teach these young guys how to become those level of veterans. So I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to move with that. I do want to ask you this, though. You talked about being honest, being upfront. We saw that from Bryson Graham. Dare I say we saw that a little bit more from Michael Reinsdorf, who we haven't heard talk a ton here in Chicago. And usually when we hear him talk, it's a situation like this. Do you feel like Michael kind of had to learn the ins and outs of being, as the Bulls call him, the governor of this team before getting to this point? Because I kind of feel like we saw that with George McCaskey a little bit, where, George kind of hired the first few people and let people tell him what to do. And then he was like, okay, I got my footing here now. I'm still going to go out and find guys that can help me along with this. But now I know what it means to be the final say, the person in charge. I feel like we saw a little bit of that from Michael Reinsdorf in that presser.
I would agree, and a level of contrition that I think, again, is very much appreciated by people of Midwest sensibilities. I think that's appreciated. Just to, hey, like, I people are very forgiving in here. I think a lot of, just in general, I do think people are very forgiving. But I think in Chicago, we're very forgiving, and we're like, just tell us you made a mistake. Tell us and you acknowledge that we're frustrated, and if you do that, I promise you we'll go with whatever you say if you give us an articulate and clear plan. And that's probably the first time that Michael Reinsdorf has really felt like it was necessary for him to do so. I don't think I think the Bulls, the White Sox, like, these are really good, like, businesses to work for, right? I think I like bosses that delegate, like we just talked about, like with Ben Johnson and all that. Like, I like bosses that are confident enough in their process and in their own knowledge to be able to delegate. But I also know that sometimes owners in sports across the country, professional sports across the country, some owners are like, I'm just here for the money. I'm just the money guy. I want you guys to do what you think is right. That could be a really great position to be in if you're an employee, but maybe the resources are a little harder to come by with a different organization or a different owner who says, well, I want to be fully involved with everything. There's the Steve Cohen and Steve Ballmer guys who are like, I'll spend whatever it takes as long as we get a title. And, I'll perhaps do some nefarious things if need be to get to that point.
I'm not saying that trees were planted, but maybe there's a bag of money behind them.
Who knows what's going on back there? I'm trying to remember his name. His name is Tom Dundon, is the owner of the new owner of the Blazers.
Yes.
And like, I'm holding back judgment before, until I know exactly what's going on. But all these stories came out when he first took over of, like, kind of nickel and diming certain things, and he's not bringing two-way players on playoff trips, and we're not going to pay for T-shirts. And again, from the outside looking in, my first thought is like, well, I know how it's done in the NBA, and I know there are plenty of owners that do that because that's part of the deal. And he's coming in doing these things, and I'm going, well, why are you doing this? It doesn't make sense to me based off of the standard that I see set. Yes. But when the last time the Blazers won a title? Like, they haven't been in the finals since the early 90s. They haven't won a title since the late 70s. So, like, I get that his thought process is probably, well, I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to be more involved. And then I think I saw him like on with Max Kellerman the other day, and he said, like, I didn't know that we were supposed to bring two-way guys because from my NHL background,
Yes.
we didn't bring extra players on these trips because it's like it's not necessary for them to be there. We're trying to keep it, more focused on the
It's a
series.
business trip.
It's a business trip, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I get that. I
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from. So let me like not put judgment on this until like we get some time and then eventually some results. So that's the first time I've heard that person speak.
Right.
This is one of the few times that we've heard Michael Reinsdorf like try to articulate like his thought process and his frustration seemingly. Like that's not a fun thing to be a part of either when you're the president and CEO and people are looking at you saying your family's cheap and you don't care. And again, you can believe those two things to varying degrees, but if you go out in front of people and say, "I'm sorry for how this is going," I'll say it this way. I have very little professional empathy for anybody who has $1 billion.
Yeah.
I don't have it. I have very little professional empathy.
Yeah.
I do have significant personal empathy for anybody in any position. I can create empathy or build empathy or the concept of it for just about anybody if they reveal something vulnerable about how they're thinking about the position that they're currently in. And for the first time, I think a lot of us heard that from the president and CEO of the organization. And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in. I appreciate that you went out of your way to do that. And if your boss at whatever company you work for or whatever factory you worked at, and your boss gives a little bit of that to you, somebody who clearly works very hard and is not high up on the totem pole and we're part of the rank and file, and you hear that from people in positions of authority and stature and resource, you go, okay, I appreciate that. What do you need me to do? That's how the attitude of I think this city's fan base is. And I think it was nice to get to that point for maybe the first time for a lot of fans under this current like iteration of what the regime looks like.
Yeah, listen, as long as the one thing that I appreciate about Michael, and I will say this, right, from a construction background, being in construction before, you can't give me too many pizza parties, right? Like if you worked if you worked a regular job, right, it's like, hey man, appreciate y'all getting that done instead of a bonus pizza party. Like, don't give me too many pizza parties, right? I'll take the first one. The second one better be some money. But like the one thing that I appreciate is I thought that he laid out what I have talked about as the Reinsdorf philosophy for years, but he finally revealed it. You talk about revealing something where he's like, I don't mind paying the luxury tax, but we better be a team that's going to go out there and win championships. Or we better be a team that's at least going to be competing for championships. And I think that that's something that I don't want to say was hidden, but kind of was just like, if you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. I think back to the D Rose years where they did go into the luxury tax to add Marco Bellinelli. And it was like, okay, we got a guy. We got the shooting guard we need. D Rose gets hurt. They get rid of Bellinelli. We don't need this guy if we're not competing for championships. And so like I feel like he allowed Bulls fans to understand the philosophy of, I don't mind paying money, because we've seen the Bulls spend money. People who are stuck on the Reinsdorfs are cheap. Money is not always spent in the right place, I think, is the better way to talk about it. Very similar to what we've seen with the Bears. And so like now I think that with Bryson Graham coming in, the question is he going to be able to figure out, okay, where do we need to distribute this money best? Because one thing that I think is going to be massive this offseason, I'll ask you this. The two best players that you have on your team, and probably the two longest tenured players at some point that are going to be on this team, are Giddey and Modest, right? Like those are the ones that you look at and you say, these are the guys that you can kind of build around for your future. Sure. Do you see them more as rotation pieces of the future, or do you see them as kind of like they are the future and you have to find a nice piece to pair with them?
I think I'm not sure that Josh can be that guy because of the role that he's asked to play. It's very hard, I think, in the modern NBA for a true point guard.
Oh, true point, yeah.
To kind of be, and when I say true point guard, I mean like the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands with a good chunk of his purpose to get other people involved and get the offense going. And like I look at Jalen Brunson, right? Like he's the point guard of the Knicks, but he is a true scoring point guard. He is the point guard because the ball is in his hands more often than anybody else. Very high usage rate. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just won his second MVP. He usurped Giddey as like the point guard. Shea
Yeah.
Gilgeous-Alexander is a combo guard, really like a true scoring guard. He's the PG because the ball is going to be in his hands 36% of the impact plays of game. Like but as much as those guys get assists, like Brunson will get you, some triple doubles. Shea Gilgeous will get you a triple double once in a while, but Shea is out there to score 30 and get to the
100%.
line. His assists come as like a byproduct of, the defense adjusted its offense to gravitationally stop me. I've got a lot of good players around me. I know how to get them the ball. That's how he gets those. Josh Giddey could have averaged, closer to 10 or 11 assists a game if this was a team full of shooters.
Yeah.
His scoring is not going to be, I don't think Josh is built to be a Jalen Brunson, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander type, Luka Doncic type of scoring guard. Like, he is really out there to score somewhere between 10 and 25 points on a night.
Yeah.
And to get you 9 to 14 rebounds a game and to get you 8 to 14 assists a night. And the bottom of the second two parts of those are far more important to me based off of his skill set. Now, I want him to be able to score whenever he wants to, but I think Josh plays this position and this sport in a style of, I am the last line. Like, if you need me, I'm going to take the shot. If you need me, I'm going to drive the ball. If you need me, I'll take the jumper. I'll go to the basket and I'll go to the line. But my initial thought is, I want to get my shooter involved. I want to get my slasher involved. I want to get my post guy involved. And that way everybody's kind of, in on what's going good, what's going well offensively for our team. So it's hard to put a player like that, and I'm talking strictly skill set, like Josh Giddey in that position. I think Buzelis has the potential for that, but it's far too early to be able to tell. I think him being able to score 40 in a game on the road last year was a big deal. Putting together a couple of 30-point games, being able to knock down 5 threes in a game, being able to get to the line a few more times. And again, he's talked about what he wants to do this offseason and put on some weight and be able to absorb a little bit more contact, because I think his bag is rock solid right now. And I do hope that, Stacey and I harped on it during the broadcast a lot. And I understand that after Ayo Dosunmu left and talked about the philosophy of the offense being very rim and 3-point heavy, Stacey and I have always been of the opinion, and I think this is the direction that the league is going to move in the next 2 years anyway, that the mid-range game has to be an important part of what you do. Just the threat of being able to score from the mid-range, like Shea Gilgeous does, by the way. We had this great stat. We had this great breakdown. I think when the Bulls last played the Thunder, he had scored 20 plus in 133 straight games. Now he had already broken the Wilt Chamberlain record at that point. He was just building and continuing it. And I want to say a quarter of his points were coming at the free throw line, but a good chunk of his points were coming from mid-range shots. And watching him operate in the mid-range, and he didn't have a great shooting night that night, but over the course of the year, like, Shea kills it in the mid-range. His baseline fadeaway game is ridiculous. And I think somebody like Modest at 6'10", if he can have that as a consistent part of his game, there are very few guys that can stop that. Like, do you want to be like, nobody's Wembanyama? He's 7'6" with handles. He's an impossible shot to block. So you're not going to be that guy. But what are the things that make him unique? It is his size and his skill set, and Modest is at a size and a sampling of a skill set that I think can be not one of one, but one of maybe like 10 guys in the league that can do the things that he might be able to do. And a lot of that comes from that area of the floor that doesn't get defended the same way anymore. Teams are more rim and 3-point line heavy on the defensive end. And you can construct offensive sets to get you work in the mid-range game. It doesn't always just have to be, well, I'm Brandon Ingram, I'm DeMar DeRozan, I'm Devin Booker, I have great handles and I just shoot well from that area, so I'll beat you off the dribble and pull up from 13 feet.
Right.
It's not. You can run some stuff, especially when you have a player like Josh Giddey, where you can put him in different parts of the floor at 6'8" because of his vision over the top. You can have Buzelis score from different parts of the floor, get the ball in different parts of the floor, let him operate, and you have the makings of something unique. Now, all of this to say, I know it was a kind of roundabout answer, but all of this to kind of connect it to, are these guys the guys? I think Josh's role dictates that he is getting somebody like Modest involved. And Modest, if he improves on what he's been doing and adds to it, then I think he can eventually be a 25 point per game scorer if that's what you want to lean into. A lot of that is going to depend on who you draft. Are you going to draft a
Yeah.
team for the next 2 years? You know, the two guys you get first round this year and whoever you get next year. Are you going to build like a 5 or 6 man core and then go out and get somebody? Or has Modest become that guy? Or has one of your draft picks become that guy? I think you don't have to put that cart before this current horse yet. And I think who you end up drafting and then who you end up hiring as the head coach is going to have a lot to do with what the responses to the queries are.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because like the one thing for me last season that it made me pull my hair out with Billy Donovan is I remember when Modest was drafted, he had this float game in the mid range, this little push float that he was dominating with down in the G League, right? And it was like he would get to that mid range spot, and defenders had to make a decision because it was like he might shoot the floater or he might dunk on me. Like I am in a very bad spot here. Is that one of the outside of wins? Because I think wins is the end of the day, but like, and there just wasn't enough of them with Billy Donovan. But I think Billy's a fine coach. Outside of wins, is that one of the things that you would like to see whoever the next head coach of the Bulls kind of adjust to? Because Billy was okay with the mid-range shot when it was DeMar taking them, because you see historically what it is. But once DeMar was out of there, it was kind of like, all right, no more mid-range. We're not doing this anymore. We're going to 3. We're going into paint, and that's going to be our offense. And I just felt like it's not an offense that fits the players that you have on your team best.
Yeah, I think understandably, and I don't think Billy was the only coach, and the Bulls certainly were not the only organization that are looking at the NBA shot profile, saying here's where on average teams are getting their points, right? And the high levels of efficiency come from here, and the ability to shoot and get an extra point from this distance means that we can take more shots from there and make up for anything we lose by not taking 2-point shots. Like NBA average on 2-point baskets, it's very symmetrical. When I looked it up, and it may have changed slightly in the last couple of months, but when I last looked it up, 2-point percent average was like 54%. 3-point average was 36%. So if you took 100 2-point shots and made 54% of them, or took 100 3-point shots and made 36% of them, you would score the exact same amount of points.
Right.
So that's your typical shot profile. Totally fine. If you go 50-50, you'll still score the same amount of points. That's just a math problem, right? So if you take 52s, 53s, you end up scoring the same amount of points from both of those areas on the floor. So if that's your shot profile, now let's figure out where you need to lean. Where does the deviation come? And that's where I think the organizational, like the human element of the organization needs to come in. I think you can break down a lot of this stuff analytically and take an individual's play and say, hey, you do your best work from here. Let's focus on that. But if that doesn't fit the general organizational shot profile, then the coaching staff is not going to emphasize those things. And that's how you get a situation where, and again, I don't know every single detail of this, so it's very easy for me to be like, oh, well, that was all Billy, or that was all AK, or that was all the NBA analytics guys, or that was all, like, it's very easy to just point a finger at one thing or one person and say that was it. I think this was probably over time like an organizational thought, and a lot of people had to be involved with making it a thing. To me, I think the best organizations look at that 50-50 split and go, hey, we've got 4 guys on this team that all shoot 39% or better from 3-point range. League average is about 36. So 39%, that's a pretty good shooter. Obviously, anything you get over 40, you're feeling very good
100%.
as a 3-point shooter in this league. So Bulls didn't really have that guy. Sexton had that in a small sample. Yabusele had it in a small sample, but that's not sustainable for those 2 guys based on their previous track record. So you really didn't have a great 3-point shooter once you made all the trades. Dosuma was your best guy. Kobe was your streakiest and most impactful guy, but you didn't really have like a great shooter on your team once those trades were made. So I think the key is now to say, well, we shouldn't necessarily try to fit these particular players into that same shot profile that we've been working off of based off of league averages or what have you. We should say, well, listen, Modest is like a league average shooter from 3, about 36%, 100%. Which is an improvement. It's a great improvement from where he was in the G League to where he was as a rookie to where he is now. That's a great improvement. So you're a league average 3-point shooter. But to me, your above average skill set really focuses in on the things you can do around the rim and the things that you could be able to do because of your size advantage from, in particular, the small forward spot
Yeah.
to be able to take advantage of players that are defending you. And there are certain situations where Modest was essentially the two, and now you've got a player that's maybe 4 or 5 inches shorter than him trying to guard him. That's where you need to exploit some of these advantages and say, well, instead of taking 53s and 52s, why don't we gear it towards 60 to 70 of those 100 shots need to be from 15 feet and down, and of those 60 or 70 shots, let's try to get at least half of those at the rim because you're a great dunker and we want to
Right.
get you to the free throw line and you're going to build on your body. So next year you can do that more. And then the other 30, let's really try to improve that 3-point shot, make it a 38%, 39% 3-point shot. And which is right around like where Josh Giddey was these last couple of years. Again, big improvement for him. Like
Massive.
let's get you there and improve that shot. So you also have to understand the balances of how you're going to be defended when you're a high level scorer, because suddenly
Yes.
if you're only taking 30 shots from three, but you're making 14 of them, now teams suddenly have this desire, even though 70% of your shots are going downhill or from 15 feet in. Well, he also shoots 42% right now for the first 40 games from three. The first time we played them, he made 3 out of 5, and then he beat us off the dribble for 8 free throw attempts. And all right, we need to defend him a little bit more. Let's go jump out on him at the 3-point line and try to prevent him from getting to the rim and contest his shots. Well, now because of what he's done, skill set wise, hopefully offseason body wise, now this is a time where you work off the dribble, get to a mid range spot. Teams are trying to recover on you, and either you pull up mid range or somebody makes a basket cut on the other side of the floor, and that's an easy assist. Like, these are the domino effects that are very easy for somebody like me to talk about,
Right.
and much harder to do in a 24-second shot clock when a 6'5", 220-pound, like, scrappy two guard is in your face defensively. But this is how like profiles get created for teams. This is how identities for players get created. And it does take time. It does take seeing a team multiple times and seeing how they defend you and learning individually on what you're doing. But this is how the process has to take place. And that's how those two guys can step into roles that are necessary for a team like the Bulls to have. Will it be those two guys? I'm not sure. But it can be. I think certainly Modest is capable of being one of those guys.
Yeah, you've seen the growth and development of Modest. It's so funny, right? Because you bring up like how teams will adjust if you just start knocking down a couple of them. I remember the first year when DeMar was here, he was knocking down a 3-pointer at a better clip, and all of a sudden you're seeing teams defend DeMar, who is.
Sure.
I mean, well, maybe you depend on where you got Jordan and I guess Jerry West, but like he's probably in the top 3 mid-range shooters we've ever seen in NBA history.
Sure.
And teams are sitting there running out to the 3-point line.
Certainly one of the most productive, right? Like
100%.
him and the Durants and as you mentioned, Jerry and Michael Jordan and Kobe late in his career. Like, these guys were very productive from that area of the floor.
100%. It's funny because it's like you see him running out to the 3-point line. He's like, you know where DeMar's gonna beat you, and yet you're doing that. So hopefully we can see Modest add some of that to his game. I want to get into some Bears talk here with you as well, but I do want to finish it off with this on the Bulls side of things. There's a lot of trade speculation in this draft. For you, is there a player in this draft that you would move heaven and earth to go after, or are you kind of just like your top 4, take who's there?
I don't think anybody is necessarily looking like a generational talent. And if I'm using that term, I'm thinking of Wembanyama. Like, right
Yes.
now, it's like, do you have a franchise shifting player? I think AJ DeBanza, wherever he ends up, is going to be an elite level scorer. I don't know if that necessarily means he's going to be a franchise player. There's also probably not going to go to a particularly good franchise, so it's very difficult to put that label on him in general. And I think most of the players in this draft they're not expected to be generational and franchise moving players. What I do think is you can get a high quality player that has a very high ceiling with the right development, with the right situation. And that to me means you don't have to move heaven and earth to get to a certain guy. I think it's more important to get the best available player. And again, in my gut, I'm starting to think it's going to end up being Boozer because I just
Yeah.
feel like I've been on Caleb Will. I get very biased. I don't call a ton of college basketball, but the rare occasions I do, I get to see good players. And I saw Caleb Wilson play against Michigan State on Thanksgiving, and I was like, "You're 18 and you're moving like this in the open floor." Like, he had an incredibly deep bag. He's going up against 22, 23-year-olds, that Michigan State team, and definitely maneuvering and making smart heads up plays. And then talking to him, he was a really, really like chill, humble person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, this is it seems like, based off limited interaction, a very high character individual with a really high basketball ceiling. And then he didn't play in the tournament because he got hurt. So I don't think a lot of people, a good chunk of people who start to pay attention to the college guys right around the tournament time were like, well, I don't know who Caleb Wilson is. I
Yeah.
think I heard of him, but he's not playing. Oh, Boozer did. I know who he is. I know who DeBance is. And I think Wilson's probably opened up a lot of eyes. So I get this feeling that we're going to see DeBance, Peterson, Wilson, and then Boozer to the Bulls.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel too. It's funny. The conspiracy theorist in me is like, I feel like the top two picks, both teams coming out and being like, we'd be okay trading the pick, is because of Caleb Wilson, because they're like, I can't not pick AJ DeBance if I'm one. Yeah. But I kind of want this Caleb Wilson kid who looks phenomenal at 3. And if I can get something for it, I would love to. He's the one for me that I'm like, if you can move up at all, I'd love to see it. Although I don't know if I saw an evaluation, somebody said his floor is KG, his ceiling is Giannis. And I was like, so he should be the number 1 overall pick. That's kind of
it's very. I think it's very easy to put those labels on it too. But like I said, I'm not expecting any of these guys to like. Cooper Flagg is a franchise-changing player, but that has a lot more to do with who's in Dallas. Like, he is the only guy. Yeah. Washington has been adding a lot of young, good talent for a while. They have a bunch of rotational pieces that they've drafted over the last couple of years. Utah's lineup is not bad. Like, they have guys that are there. I think DeBance is going to fit right in if he ends up, going to Utah. Like, I know it's going to be tough because, I think he probably wants to stay in Utah after playing at BYU, and his opportunities, financially are probably greater there. But like, I think he's going to fit right in pretty much wherever he ends up. I think that's what the Bulls are gunning for. Like, get this guy, build with him, build with Modest. How do you take advantage of the skill set and tools that you have? And I think, more importantly, what do you end up doing at 15? That's where, that's where the Giannis's get picked. They get picked around that area of the draft. Like, how do you find somebody who is a viable rotation piece that's going to be involved as a rookie right away?
Yeah, 15 is going to be massive in this draft as well. We focus on the top 4, but I think there's some really good players around 15. Hit that like button if you guys haven't done so. Subscribe to the page. Leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. I want to get into a little bit of Bears with you because you get an opportunity while, being from here and being a fan of the team. You had an opportunity to see the entire league and call some really, really big games. And the one thing that I think I really want to learn from you is, what do you notice is the common theme for teams that are consistently at the level that I think we saw the Bears play at last year, which is playoff caliber, kind of fringing on that championship caliber, didn't get there, of course, to the NFC title game. But like, what do you see that avoids the pop-up seasons that we've seen here in Chicago so often, right? Nagy 1 year, the Super Bowl, of course, in the Lovey years were probably the best, but then you get Mark Trestman 1 year. We don't see the sustained success here in Chicago.
Yeah, I think a lot of it obviously is going to have to do with how Ben Johnson adjusts his offense, and what steps Caleb Williams takes, because, it's teams, once they get this much film on you, I think start to lean into specific tendencies. And, the credit I give to Ben is that they improved their offense the few years that he was in Detroit. Like, the offense has got better. Jared Goff got better. I think each year they were able to add wrinkles. How do you take advantage of continuity? And again, another Detroit theme from when Ben was there. Like, they had enough continuity to where they could mess around. Like, we remember the trick plays they ran against the Bears a couple of years ago. Like, they can mess around because, like, we've been together for 3 years. We've been together for a lot of practices.
And Ben was trying to get wild. He's like, actually fumble the football, pick it back up, and then throw it. Like, all right, dog, you do it too much.
It's like a little extra, but I again, it comes from a place of confidence, I would imagine, right? So, like we've had the reps together. Like, the Brady Patriot teams, like, were really good because a lot of those guys just been together, and Brady and his center had been together, and the offensive line knew what they were doing. And The receivers learned fast because the expectation was there, and they have all the tools to be able to build, on what they did last year. It's not as if there's a ton of elements that got taken away, or you have a new quarterback, or you got a new head coach, or like all the elements of a great offensive team are still there.
Yeah.
And you've drafted well. I think the guys you've picked in the last two drafts should be contributors right out of the gate, or out of this draft, just as was the
100%.
case
Yeah.
last year. Like, you should have guys that are contributors right out of the gate. It's a lot of like, how are you ready to counterpunch right away? Because you're going to play difficult defenses all season. It's going to
Yes.
be this is hard of a schedule as you're going to find, which comes with the territory, right? This is how the NFL scheduling system works. The top flight teams play other top flight teams as part of a rotation if they win the division the previous year. So you're going to play, what was it, 4 teams that had like 11 plus wins.
Yeah.
It's like 6 playoff teams, or something like that early. It's a really hard schedule. So, and a lot of those teams have great defenses. So again, are you ready to counterpunch right out of the gate? Are you ready to, come into camp and build on, like, you don't have to go through install again. Like, I know what you should know all this stuff. Here's what I want to add to it. And I think the creativity level of Ben Johnson will be tested in a good way. I think, Caleb Williams' mentality is going to be tested even harder. Like, we saw how, mentally tough he seemingly is last year during a lot of those moments, and during the high pressure situations. And, they're tasked with something very difficult. I think I saw a number where the Bears have, technically, based off opponent strength of schedule, the hardest schedule in the league, right? And again, that's a little misleading because the level of parity in the NFL is very high, and again, the schedule matching and all that. But the last team that came into the year with the league's toughest schedule and win a playoff game was the Falcons team 10 years ago that blew the lead in the Super Bowl. Like, which shouldn't define them of what we're talking about in this particular case. Like, that was a really good Matt Ryan-led team, but that was the last one. There have been 10 years of teams that come in with the hardest schedule and cannot get to the playoffs or win a game.
Yeah.
And this is a big task, and especially in a division where, I don't think there has been too much of a drop-off. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding the other 3 teams, but there hasn't been a ton of drop-off.
So when you look at the schedule, you do feel that this is going to be a tougher test for the Bears, because I look around at division. If you're predicting more than 3-3, you're insane. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. This division is going to be a bloodbath. I think Detroit bounces back in a big way. I think Minnesota's dangerous with Kyler Murray there, because he will just at least throw the football to Justin Jefferson consistently. But when I look at some of the other teams, right, and how it's set up, and I don't know if you saw the net rest, the Bears have the most rest in the NFL, if you can call it rest at a certain point. A lot of those tough games, though, are in Soldier Field. And when I look at that, I'm like, the Bears defended Soldier Field really well at a shocking rate for where they were the season before. That kind of makes me feel like, and 10 years is crazy. Hearing that stat is insane. But, like, not that the schedule's not as difficult as it's being billed, but that the Bears have a lot more advantages than maybe some of those other teams did.
I think that's fair. And that gets built into how you structure your week, who is doing scout for when, for which opponents and stuff like that. Like, that goes into the week to week, day to day structure of, like, your season. And again, this now that you know the schedule, you can start to plan this as a staff, and it starts with Ben and obviously trickles downwards. I do think there are some advantages in there. I still don't think it's going to be very easy, and not to say that anybody thinks it's going to be, but I just look at the rest of this. Like, Carolina is going to be an interesting game right out of the gate. I'm looking at the schedule now. You have difficult games, a division game, and then a Philadelphia game, but those are at home. You get, the Packers at home late in the season on Christmas. That's a nice advantage to have. I think 2 of the final 3 games, the last 3 are all divisional games, and 2 of them are at home. So that's a nice boost that you get as well. Bye week comes at a good time. It's basically a mid-season bye. Yeah. So it comes at like a decent time. I think you'll have 3 primetime games, or 3 like non-Sunday games.
Right.
I think there's a Monday, a Thursday, and a Monday in the first half of the year before the bye week comes. And then obviously everybody has a little bit of a wonky schedule in the second half. So, but you'll get a lot of that stuff out of the way. Now, you might get flexed, obviously, et cetera, et cetera. That's it's fine, but
Yeah, that
I
final
think that they're
TBD on the Vikings
yeah.
game and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you're right though in just saying that there's small little advantages that you try to take to your team and say, hey, here's how we're going to structure this week. Remember, you guys have your bye coming up. We're going to try to set up this week for you this way or whatever it is. Like that, those things start to become a little bit more of a factor as you get closer to the season. I think the last thing I would say too, Pat, just to go back to a previous question, was like the common theme. I don't think I did a thorough enough thought about it. You know, I look at teams like Green Bay, which has had consistent winning for the most part. The teams in the division obviously have been like successful to solid degrees in the last
Yes.
decade. So I haven't seen every team in this division. I feel like coaching philosophy and identity goes a long way. Whether you agree with Matt LaFleur's style or agree with it, whether you like Dan Campbell's energy or think it's like off-putting, whether you think Kevin O'Connell's cerebral methodology is too much for some people to handle or just right for the modern NFL, you know what you're getting with a lot of those guys. Minnesota, you know what you're getting with their defense. And I think when players come in, whether they're draftees or whether they're signees, they have an idea of what is expected of them. And it's only been a year, but I just feel like with success comes perception. And the perception of the Bears is that of a successful franchise
Yeah.
because they've made a lot of right moves over the last couple of seasons. Drafting Caleb and hiring Ben are two of the most impactful and most visible moves that you're going to get, and both have paid very good dividends so far. So the perception changes. The thing is, perception of the NFL changes very fast. It's a league that is built on parity, that is built based off of the draft, based off of what salary structure is. I think rookie contracts are huge assets to win. When you see a really talented young player, say, let's surround him with talent now and take an early shot like Seattle did with Russell Wilson. They were one of the first teams when Russell was on his rookie contract to go win, after the Sam Bradford deal
kind of started
that Sam Bradford deal took place, and then the restructuring of how like rookie deals were and what the max was, and then how it affects your salary ceiling. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, Russell Wilson's really good, and we can pay our running backs and we can pay our receivers and we can pay the Legion of Boom, and we might have enough to win a Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
And they only got back once, and they didn't win it again until this past season. Several quarterbacks.
You just turn around and hand it off. I mean,
but like that's what it is. Like the rookie contract is a huge asset right now, and Caleb being on a rookie contract means you can take some shots now before he is going to, probably rightfully so, demand a very high percentage of the salary structure for the Bears.
Yeah, let's hope that we do a lot of winning before we get to that point. But it doesn't stop. I think a lot of Bears fans too, they're like, you got to win before the rookie contract. It's like, people win Super Bowls after they get money, right? Like Tom Brady won a lot after he was paid well. So he wasn't.
Absolutely.
And he wasn't struggling in this league.
There shouldn't be a panic about it. But I do think that where the Bears have been in recent years to try to build something sustainable for the future, like if you win on a rookie deal or with a quarterback on a rookie deal, suddenly that's a major free agent destination. And what ends up happening is if you sustain, now teams or players are willing to take salary cuts. They're willing to go somewhere where they can win. It's a much more attractive veteran destination because guys who are talented but haven't been in the right structure but have made a lot of money, the Justin Jeffersons of the world stick out to me. Like, hey, he's one of the best receivers of his generation, and yet he hasn't really made a deep impact in the playoffs. What do you expect from guys like that? Well, eventually as they get older, they go, hey, I've made $200 million. I'm taking care for the rest of my and my family's life. How about I go somewhere where I can make an impact on a younger team, on a young receiving room, and with a quarterback that looks like he knows what he's doing and a coach that I think I might want to play for. Let me go win a Super Bowl with these guys. And we've seen numerous stories of that over the course of this century in the NFL.
100%. At least for Justin Jefferson, play with a quarterback that puts him in his own top 5 wide receivers. I don't know if you saw that from JJ McCarthy. I'm like, you don't got your guy? Okay, buddy, don't worry about it. Listen, right, Caleb would have put Rome in there and we'd have been like, that's a stretch, but I get it. Let's finish it out with this, Adam. Appreciate you taking the time out. I want to ask some questions about Adam Amin. We talked about the Bulls. We've talked about the Bears. Now I want to talk about Adam and get your perspective on some things. What's harder to call, Mr. Amin? A blowout in the NBA or a blowout in the NFL?
Blowout in the NFL. and that is, and I can't necessarily speak to it from a national perspective on the NBA because I haven't done national games
Right.
in 5 or 6 years, but I know that doing a blowout for the Bulls, while not fun necessarily, like subject matter wise, like having Stacy to do that with is like makes it a million times easier
Yeah.
and a million times more fun, and our crew.
Stacy's
Like it's
seen
just
too many of them. He knows how to
it's a,
navigate it.
he knows how to navigate it, and sadly so do I. We both have a penchant for being able to do it at a decent enough level based off of our 6 years together and some rough nights, but it's a lot more fun and easier to do. It's easier to do with like your local audience, I think,
Yeah.
and doing it on a national broadcast for the NFL, especially on a Sunday when we're a regional game and there's 6 other games going on potentially, like it's like you're probably going to tune out anyway or flip over to Red Zone or flip over to CBS. So it's like, I understand it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a stranger situation in the NFL to be a part of it, and it just doesn't happen as often. Like you get a lot.
Yeah.
There's only so many games. The margins are pretty low. Most games go down. I think it's 70% of games are one-score games in the fourth quarter in the NFL the last few years. So, with that in mind, it's rare to see it. And then you're trying to talk big picture on teams that people may already like. If you're doing a game of like between Jacksonville and Tennessee, which I've done, like it's usually just local audience, right? That's
Yeah.
a smaller percentage of the game going to or a smaller percentage of that other country getting that game. So it's like, well, I don't really need to talk about Jacksonville and Tennessee. It's Jacksonville and Tennessee fans, and they know. Like you watch Sunday Night Football and they get a blowout. Yeah, they got a ton of stuff, and a lot of it is actually pretty good to learn, but it's not as fun to do. The NBA, at least I got Stacy, and it's a little bit more of a frequent occurrence, so you get used to it a little.
Yeah. What's a better feeling for you, calling a game winner, no matter the sport, or a crowd being completely locked in when you're up there DJing?
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
that's a
I know a
great
little
question.
music too.
That's a little that's a test of ego, I think, more than anything else. Like it's like the crowd being locked in on when like I'm playing a set is a big deal. Like that's a good feeling. That's a really good, but it's based off of something you're doing individually, right?
Yeah.
Like you're selecting things, and I think that's what's you know fun about the job that I have is like I'm just documenting the exploits of other people. And I think what's fun to experience is the crowd pop. You don't really get that part of it. The crowd pop is the big thing, right?
Yeah.
Like when the shot goes down and the crowd goes nuts and it's 20,000 people, like I'm not doing anything like that if I'm DJing. So I think, that it's probably the game winner. The game winners, I remember the game winners, to this day. I remember
Yeah.
what it felt like. I remember the moments. I remember the calls. I remember the feeling. I remember the silence and just kind of looking around and seeing everybody else go nuts. Like I remember those for a long time.
Yeah, I know I grew up a musician, play music, still do all that.
Yep.
When you get somebody lock in with you and they got the head nod right with you and you make a switch and they go with you, you're like, okay, I got you.
That's a very good
feeling,
man. It's a very good feeling.
What was the first game that you called that made you stop and go, I can't believe I get to do this for a living?
That's a great question too. I think like I won't count like the minor leagues, doing minor league baseball
Sure.
because I don't think because you don't really feel like you're still in the grind.
You're still working.
You're still really working. I've had 3 major like inflection points in my career. One in football, one in basketball, one in baseball. And the football one was the first one. It was called the Iron Bowl, the kick six game. I called the kick six game on national radio, and it was the first like major college football game I'd ever called. I'd been working at ESPN I was in my second season at ESPN, but I was calling mostly like HBCU football on tape delay on Saturdays.
Right.
I was calling like BYU games when they were in the the WAC against like the WAC. I was calling the WAC Western Athletic Conference when they were Division One. And I was doing like like high school football and like high prospect games. So it's like I didn't really get a feel for like big time college football until calling the kick six game in 2013. So
that's like, a heck of a game to call.
And it's one that kind of really makes you feel like, oh, this is what it's like when this many people care and when the stakes are this high. And it's number 1 against number 4. Amari Cooper had a 99-yard touchdown from AJ McCarron in that game. And then obviously the way it ended with Saban asking for the extra second on the clock and the freshman missing the field goal and then Chris Davis running it back. That's one of the coolest moments of this century in sports. And I got to be one of the four, voices that called it. It was me, Eli Gold of Alabama radio, Vern Lundquist on CBS, and then I turned around and it was the late Rod Bramblett, who was the longtime voice of Auburn sports and passed away, in recent years. So like that was a meaningful night, and it was the first night I left the stadium and thought, oh, that's what the really big ones feel like, and I hope I get to do that a few more times in my career.
That you've called some awesome games. That is a massive one. Let's finish it out with this. Outside of the phenomenal games that you've called, if you could call one game in history, go back and you're the voice on that game, what would it be?
I think it's a tie between 65 Sandy Koufax perfect game.
Okay.
Or 88 the game one of the World Series, the Kirk Gibson home run. I think those are two of the most incredible storytelling examples, certainly in baseball, and they're probably my two favorite baseball moments of all time. Like just as a broadcaster, I just think the artistry that went into, calling it on the radio like Vin Scully did when Koufax throws a perfect game, 29,000 people and a million butterflies. And like, that's one of those things where you hear that go, I can't believe human beings say those things in real time talking about sports. And then obviously I'm picking two Vin Scully moments, but Jack Buck had an incredible call on the 88 World Series on radio as well. But that was, I don't believe what I just saw and things like that. So I think those are the two games that have like a certain poetry to what we do. If we treat what we do as a craft, I think those are the two games that I would love to be in the chair for. Not because I think I could do a better job, but because I would have liked to have an opportunity to try.
Yeah, classic games, classic moments. I mean, like there's so many of those great calls. And listen, I'll be honest with you. I know it doesn't mean much in the full season and things like that. Your call on Josh Giddey with the half court shot, like those are moments where it's like, you are now synonymous with Chicago. Like you are going to go down as the Neil Funks, the Stacey Kings, whatever it is, the Hawk Harrelsons, right? Call your moms, call your brothers, call your neighbors.
People remember.
Mark Burley has a perfect game going into the ninth. Like those moments are the moments that make people like me sports fans. And we appreciate you for doing the job that you do. Appreciate you for being as good as you are and being as thorough as you are. Cause I've watched you call some blowouts too. And, they're not boring from the broadcast standpoint. There's sometimes where guys are like, as you can see, we got a blowout going here. Like, thanks. Thank you. I'm watching the game. You know what I mean? I can also see that this is happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, credit to Adam Amin coming on. He is truly, truly Chicago. We appreciate you taking the time out with us here, Adam.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that very much. And no, you're right about those moments, man. It's cool to get to witness them in real time, and hopefully, after some time has passes, we think about them as such. I think about Len Casper calling Aramis Ramirez's walk-off home run in 2007 against the Brewers during that summer, and that was the ringtone of my phone my junior year of college because that call meant something to me as a Cub fan growing up, and Len's call on that was like the first time I remember hearing him going, "Oh, that's the voice of the Cubs now."
Yeah,
because that was like his third season doing it, right? And sometimes it takes some time, and that's how he had a great call on the Cuero walk-off too.
I was just about to say, I think he just became the 100% voice of the White Sox. Not to say he wasn't, right? Yeah. But like that was the call where it was like, oh, he's invested. Like he cares that the White Sox are beating the Cubs right now because we've seen that in the past, right? You go from Cubs to Sox. Took Stoney a couple of seasons, and you're like, I love Stoney. I kind of feel like he's a Cubs fan. And then like you see those moments like that and you hear their calls and you're just like, oh, okay, they care as much as I do that Edgar Carroll just walked off the Cubs. I love how Hoodie said it this morning. He was like, did anybody pick Len up off the floor yet? That's kind of how I felt.
It's a great way to say it. And it's a cool moment when people pinpoint, the moments like that. So I'm happy for Len, and I appreciate you kind of putting me in that category for the day. So thanks, brother.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Amin, we appreciate him taking the time out to come on the pod. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do, and make sure that you stay tapped in with everything we have here on the Windy City Breeze. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. See Red Nation stand up. Bear down. One love. Peace.